Hi, everyone. This is Joe. This is episode number 91. It is a Feedback Friday, and today's guests, today's feedbackers, what's the right term for that? I don't know. If you know, send feedback. Anyway, today's callers, I guess, are Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, ChicgoWiz / Mike from the Dungeon Master's Handbook, and Daniel from the Bandit's Keep. All three of them have podcasts, and actually Daniel has a YouTube channel. Links are in the show notes. Let's get started.
Mail call from the United States of America.
Hi, you have reached the Decahedron RPG Cast feedback line. Just start talking at the sound of the tone.
Hey, Joe, Jason here. Just listened to your discussion with Daniel. I thought it was a great discussion. I really enjoyed the back and forth and kind of feeling out each other's position and then finding out, you know, all the points of commonality between how you approach the things and just the way you described it. Really great conversation. Thank you for putting that up there. And keep up the great work. Talk to you soon.
Hey, Jason, thank you for that feedback. Yeah, Daniel was a great guest to have. I'm really glad he came on board. I think it was a really great discussion. I think it's one of the best episodes of Decahedron that have been put out, and most of that is because of Daniel. So thank you very much, Daniel. And again, thank you for that call, Jason.
Hey, Joe, Jason here. Just listen to episode 89. Honestly, I don't remember half the calls I leave people, so I have no clue if you accidentally deleted one of my messages or not. Sorry about that. I am very much up for doing the Frontier Forts of Kelnor with Tunnels and Trolls. I think that'd be a blast. So sign me up. Talk to you soon.
Hey, Jason, thanks for that additional call. So we have one confirmed, and actually we have two confirmed because James had said he will do it, but he just hasn't. Actually, I was going to say he hasn't said it on the air yet, but he has said it on the air. You just haven't heard it yet because that episode goes out next Wednesday. Thanks for that call. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to have to start working on that. I still owe Heather and Keith that Traveler game first, though. Thanks for the call.
Hey, Joe. Daniel, thanks for keep calling in. Two things. Number one, yes, 100%. I would love to play Tunnels and Trolls if you run it for myself and Jason and the legendary James. Number two, I think, well, first of all, thanks for answering my question about narrative versus, I forget the word, tactical. And, yeah, I think that then by that standard, I very much play narratively. Even though, again, it might not seem that way based on the rule set that I talk about. If you think about, for instance, I just ran a game and 4 party members fighting Hydra, and we basically, you know, just the same way you would in any game, you'd say with their armor class, I said, well, hey, defend is this. Everybody threw down their dice. They described what they did, and they had to combat. There was no, I'm behind it, I'm here, I'm there, I'm doing this. There was no miniatures on the table. There was nothing like that. So, yeah, I think that 99% of the time, I play that way. Sometimes I like to bust out the miniatures, but it's pretty rare, and only if there's something very specific, and I think it'll be fun for the whole table. And everybody's like, yeah, let's get miniatures for this, then I'll do it. Or if I bust out a board game or something, sometimes I'll do that in the middle of the game. But I also do things like if the enemy challenges them to a board game, let's say of chess, I will bust out a chessboard and actually play, or have the players play against each other and stuff like that. So I do a lot of stuff like that in my game, so I guess that's a little bit more physically propped. We'll say physically propped, as I said. But I don't do a lot of tactical, you know, I'm flanking, you're flanking, that kind of stuff. You know, unless somebody describes it, if you're a thief and you're like, all right, I'm going to sneak up on this guy and get behind him, and, you know, that seems to make sense, or you make the roll, or whatever system you're playing, then I'm certainly going to give you a bonus for that. But 99% of the time, I don't worry about where people are actually standing. It's one of the reasons why I really like D&D, like especially older styles of D&D combat, where it's super abstract. You know, no hit locations, combat rounds are a bit longer, you can move within combat, there's not like all sorts of stuff going on. Anyways, thank you so much for answering my question, and I look forward to hearing more episodes of you.
Hey, Daniel, thank you for that call. From Frontier Forts and T&T. That's it. We have all three. We are good to go. We just have to set up a date. But like I just said to Jason, I need to take care of Heather and Keith on Traveler first. I promised them that first. And although that's taking more work because it's Traveler. Actually, it's because it's a different kind of adventure. Narrative versus tactical, I guess, to sum it up the best is I like it to be story-driven, words-driven. Two things that I don't like in a game, and so I go for the opposite. I like to separate for a large part. I'll get to the exceptions in a minute. I like to separate character ability from player ability. So if you're playing Grodar, the 9th level barbarian, which I know you would never play because that's not one of the original 3 races, I mean 3 classes, and I agree with you. But anyway, as an example, if you're playing a 9th level barbarian, I think that his tactical ability and his fighting ability should be separate from your tactical ability. If I am not very good at tactics, why should my character be penalized when he isn't? So that's the one thing, and we're going to talk more about that in just a second. The second thing is rules mastery. I'm not a fan of that, and by that I mean the more the player knows the rules, the better they do at the game. I'm not a fan of that. That's one of the things I hate about 3rd edition and 3.5, right? Is that, if you take this feat at this level, that's setting you up so when you hit that level, you can take that feat. And when you hit yet that level, because you have those 2 feats, all 3 of them will have a synergy bonus, and you'll be able to do this amazing, wonderful thing. And it's a very gamist thing, which, it's okay. I mean, it's right there in the RPG, right? So I get why some people are liking it. I get, the appeal to it, but it's not what I want in my game. I want the player just to be able to say, I would do this, and not worry about all the mechanics behind it. They just need to say it. We roll some dice and we press on. Life is grand. And that's when in 3E you start talking about flanking moves and all of that. That requires them to then know that that is a thing that they could say, and that has that kind of bonus, and they can't do it in these circumstances. And I want to do a flanking move. Oh, sorry, you can't. You're not a thief. I don't like requiring the players to have rule mastery in order for their character to be better. Now, there are obvious exceptions. Obvious to me, they wouldn't be obvious to everyone else. When it comes to knowledge things like puzzles, I like to put puzzles in my dungeon, and you could easily make the argument, hey, Joe, I'm playing this 20th level magic user. He has an intelligence of 19. I don't know how you'd work that out. Maybe it's T&T. He has an intelligence of 19. Clearly, he would see right through this puzzle and be able to solve it like that. Why are you making me, the player, solve it? And it comes down to, I guess, because I want you, the player, to have that satisfaction of having solved it and not just having it given to you. Whereas if we're going to do a combat, I'm not going to whip out my sword and fight you for real around the table. So, that's how I look at it. You said that about flanking, that you would have, if they describe it, you would definitely give them a bonus. And I consider that to be very narrative. You are doing things based on what they said and the feel of the scene and the what's happening, as opposed to relying on opening the book and saying, okay, that bonus is this much. And that, it's, again, that's more rules mastery than tactical stuff. But of course, if you have mastery of the rules, then it becomes very tactical how you use them. Anyway, you said the thing about chess, and I think you're going to get, from what I've already said, you're going to know that I don't like that. Because if an NPC challenges you to a game of chess, now we're talking about my personal chess skill versus your personal chess skill. And you're not the first person to say this. Glenn Hallstrom over at Old Man Grognard, he said this once before about like Old West games and like whipping out a deck of cards to play poker. And my response to that, and it's my same response for you about this chess thing, is that me, Joe, I have never played poker in my life. I don't know how to play poker. I know that a full house is good. I don't know if that's better than a straight. I don't know if it's, well, I imagine it's better than three of a kind because three of a kind is part of a full house. But I don't know if it's better than four of a kind. I don't know. I don't know. There's all these things I don't know. But in an Old West game, I would love to play the gambler type character. Like if you think of all the Westerns there are, the old TV Westerns, the gunman. What was the other one he was in? Oh, Branded, Bonanza, Gunsmoke, all those. When you think of those, my favorite character in all of that is Brett Maverick, played by James Gardner. And he's a vagabond gambler. He's a poker player. That is the character I would love to play. But if you then whip out a set of cards and say, Joe, okay, we're going to play poker, I can't do that. I don't know how to play the game. Now, if you say we're going to play cribbage, that's my game. I love cribbage. Anyway, finally, the last thing you said that I'm going to comment on anyway was about hit locations and how you don't use them. I don't use them either. And I often say that I'm more Arnesonian than I am Gygaxian, but Arneson was very big on hit locations. That's why the hit location chart for OD&D first, and in fact only, shows up in Blackmore, the Blackmore supplement. And when Dave Arneson did his counter to D&D after leaving TSR, which was called Adventures in Fantasy, that has a section in there about hit locations and how you determine them during combat. I don't remember if that carried over to Powers and Perils. Makes me want to look it up now, but I'm not going to. I don't like hit locations. One, because they tend to slow things down, but mainly because they conflict with my idea of what OD&D combat is. And OD&D combat, I think, is supposed to be very abstract. I think every combat round is a full minute. And in a minute, you don't get in just one blow. What you're saying is the sum of everything that happened to you that round everything that you did that round enough to do serious injury to somebody. And that's what a hit is, right? A hit is a thing that will probably kill your average man. That's why you do 1d6 damage. That's why the average man has 1d6 hit points. In other words, one hit kills, on average, the average man. But of course, the vicissitudes of fate sometimes say differently, but that's what a hit is. And so if you have a hit location, I think that violates that, because it might not have just been one hit. It might have been like 4 or 5 physical hits. Anyway, so yeah, that's why I am not a fan of hit location rules. But I feel like I'm preaching to the choir there. Okay, Daniel, thanks for that call. I'm going to move on to the next one.
Hi, Joe. It's Michael, ChicgoWiz. I was just listening to your episode where you were talking to Daniel about narrative versus tactical, and hope you don't mind someone kind of joining in or giving their comment. I think I get what you're saying, though, and if I can offer an alternative word, it could be abstract versus detailed or crunchy combat. Obviously, not counting your example of Traveler, where you're actually jumping outside of the game to do something and then jumping back in. Many versions of D&D and many of the supplements of D&D tried to make the combat far more crunchy, which maybe you're talking or that's what you mean by tactical. I know that's certainly what came to my mind because, like you, I tend to like my games and my combat to be free flowing. I'm really interested. I mean, I am interested in the results of combat. I'm interested in, who lives, who dies, who's wounded, who's not. But the actual getting to that point is, for me, not as interesting as maybe it is to other people. That's not to say I don't enjoy it. I love a good D&D brawl, like anyone else, but I also like a good D&D brawl to be over in like 5 to 10 minutes, as versus an hour long combat, which when I only briefly played third edition, that's what I experienced, and one of the reasons why I was turned off on third edition. Anyway, that's just my viewpoint. Take it for what it's worth, and we'll talk at you later. Game on.
Hey, Michael / ChicgoWiz. Thanks for that call. You said if I don't mind people butting in. You're going to say butting in, but whatever. No, I don't mind at all. I welcome it. I want it. Butting all you want, even if you're going to disagree with me, but you're going to disagree with me. So yeah, I think I explained myself pretty well with my last call there to Danielle. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I have a stepdaughter named Danielle, and so whenever I start to say that word, Daniel, my muscle memory just tries to make it Danielle. So apologies, Daniel. But anyway, so yeah, I think I described what I meant a little better in what I just said. But yeah, abstract versus detail, that's definitely an excellent way to explain it. Yeah, the Traveler, playing Triplanetary. And that's why for the upcoming game, I'm actually using the rules for the starter edition. I think that gives the essence, because I do want speed to matter. In a spaceship, speed should matter. So yeah, I'm going to use the starter Traveler rules for spaceship combat. And I'd say the detail, though, is part of what I like about Traveler combat, but it's not the detail of the combat. It's the detail of the damage I like, rather than it being abstract hit points. I like that it's a death spiral of systems. I like that your engines are damaged, so you can only go 1G now instead of 2G. I like that maybe your jump engine is damaged, so you can't jump out of the system now until that gets repaired. I think that adds a nice dramatic tension, and I think that adds wonderful opportunities for the players to say, okay, engineers, I'll get to the jump drive, try to fix that. Anyway, so I like it there. And you said outcome of combat versus the process. And whose podcast was that in? I sent this as a feedback to somebody, but this is how I am about a lot of things, but about movies. Whenever a combat scene comes on in a movie, I just kind of roll my eyes, because, we know the good guy's going to win. Or if it's, the beginning of the movie, we know they're going to lose, because, that's the way they work. So let's just jump to that point and skip all the bits in between. I find it boring. I find it tedious. I think that Tolkien was a genius for having Bilbo pass out during the during the Battle of the Five Armies, and only wake up when it was done, and they just told him the highlights. Beautiful. Perfect. I wish J.J. Abrams would have, not J.J. Abrams, I wish Peter Jackson would have figured that out when he was making the Hobbit movies. Anyway, I'm getting up on a soapbox here. My two exceptions to that, though, seeing that we're talking cinema now, my two exceptions to that are the sword fight between Inigo Montoya and the Dread Pirate Roberts. Excellent fight scene. And I think it's really more about the banter than the fight scene. And the street brawl between Rowdy Roddy Piper and Keith David in They Live. Put on the glasses. No. Oh, sorry. Excellent scene. Excellent fight scene. And it just goes on too long, which is part of the magic of it. But anyway, those are my two exceptions. I am also not a fan of fight scenes. Drug out fight scenes in role-playing games. Yeah, make it simple, make it fast. Not one round, though, because I want the players to have that opportunity to say, we should run away. We should press for our victory now, right? And, I also don't like how in a lot of games, fights always go to the death and not enough people surrender and stuff. But that's another topic for another day. Hey, Michael, thank you very much for that call. And the next one's from you, too. So let's give it a listen.
Hey, Joe and Daniel. It's Michael, ChicgoWiz. Just got done listening to your episode on Whose Story Is It? Really enjoyed it. It was very interesting to hear you two kind of talk and do the mind meld on where you both were coming from. And it's funny, I recorded a much longer comment, and you ended up answering and agreeing with the points I was making anyway. So this comment is much shorter. One thing I did want to bring up, and this is something that I'm sure you and Daniel both do, but to someone that's listening, I think it's worth calling out, is, you said that as a GM, you set up the world and it's in the past, and that everything from this point forward is up to the players, and, you're setting up set dressing and whatnot. And I agree to a certain point. I think that, at least for me, I like making a world that's dynamic so that as the players do things, the world is going to respond. Or, if the players are doing things, but they're not affecting a certain part of the world, that world is going to continue on, in spite of or without being influenced by the players. I like my world to be dynamic. I don't think of my NPCs as being static dressing that are just waiting for the PCs to come into that area for them to activate. I like to think of them as having lives themselves. And as time passes, things will change, situations will change, alliances will change, resources will change. Some of it because of the players, some of it perhaps not because of the players or indirectly. And that's part of where I gain my enjoyment as a DM, is seeing the world grow and continue in spite of or because of what the players are doing. And it's an aspect that I explore, as the players will interact with the world. Every so often, I'll kind of take a survey, a census, if you will. All right, well, who's left, and what are they doing, and what's happening, and what are these factions doing, and where are they going, and so on. And I think that just adds to both the player's sense of, wow, this is a really interesting dynamic world that keeps growing, it keeps changing, and look, I'm having this effect on it, and that's really neat. And maybe they'll be tempted to dig in more. I don't know. Anyway, that's just a random thought. Really enjoyed what you did, and I hope to hear more like this. It was very refreshing and somewhat affirming to hear folks thinking much like I do. And yeah, so take care, both of you, and game on.
Hey, Michael, thanks for that call. Yeah, you're right. That is what I do. I'm pretty sure that's what Daniel does. I even, when I was doing the edit, when I heard me say that's in the past, I was like, well, that's not exactly right. But it wasn't enough to break out the computer voice to do a correction. I said, if somebody calls in, and sure enough, you called in. Yeah, of course, the world is dynamic. The NPCs are dynamic. But, right, that story all is still driven by the PCs, right? Because what they do, I didn't predetermine how they respond to the NPCs because I didn't know what the NPCs were going to do. Although, probably in broad theories, Actually, I'm going to call myself a liar right here. So one of the scenarios I like to run sometimes for a very, very small group, like 1 or 2 players, is to do a scenario where they're on this little island, a little island nation, and their father just died, right? And they're going through their stuff, and they find out by going through the stuff, they find proof in their father's belongings that their father was the rightful king, and that the person on the throne is his brother who usurped the throne. And that gives the players a legal right to challenge them for the throne. But the kicker is that the current king is very good at his job. He's a great king. The people are thriving under him. The island has two larger islands on either side who are in conflict, and he politically plays them against each other to ensure his own island's independence and sovereignty. And so it's like, how are the players going to respond to this? Are they going to go in and try to claim their rightful throne, or are they going to acknowledge that, things are better off the way they are? In the broad strokes, right, I know that the players might try to raise an army and confront the king directly. I know that they might try to go to the kingdom and talk to the king directly. And I know that they might just ignore it. And so I know how the king is going to respond to those three branches. If they do anything else weird or oddball, I'll have to calculate it from there. In general, I would say, though, everything that happens is in response to the characters' actions, and therefore it's the characters, even though they didn't do it, it's the characters' action, because it's the ripples of their actions that we're seeing. So while that's not in the past, I'm still giving the characters credit for what happens. In the other case you mentioned, where it's not, it's where the characters didn't take action, what's happening there, by the time the characters encounter that knowledge, it is again in the past. But we're on the same page. It's just the words I used and, speaking quickly. Dynamic NPCs. I agree with you. I want NPCs to grow and develop and do all that fun stuff. One of the things that has always bothered me, that bothers me to this day, it's one of the reasons I don't like running the classic dungeon, is you have two rooms side by side or across the hall from each other or whatever. And I've always got the impression that the traditional way of handling it is that the players go into, the room on the left and they take out the 5 orcs, and then they go to the room on the right and they take out the 3 goblins that were there or whatever. But I'm like, the rooms are close enough together. They would hear that commotion. Wouldn't they come over and see what's up and join the fray? But then I feel like if I'm doing that, I'm piling on more to the players than was intended, and it's unfair to the players because now they're trapped in this little room with a horde of goblins or whatever blocking their way out. And I don't think that is what the scenario designer had in mind when they designed it. I think they intended everyone just to stay in their room statically, not moving until the players burst through the door, and that drives me crazy. So yeah, I agree. I like dynamic NPCs. So yeah, we're on the same page, it sounds like, on everything. I just don't know why it took so long to say that, other than I guess I like to talk about RPG stuff. All right, Michael, thank you for that call. All right, everyone, that is all the feedback we have. We are again all caught up. And again, I'm lying a little bit because I snuck out an episode today, and Evil Jeff has already sent me feedback on that. But because that episode just dropped, that's going to be next week's feedback. This is surprising me a little bit. I guess I assume everyone does it the way I do it. And my podcatcher is set up to download new episodes every morning at like 6 in the morning. No, it's like 5 in the morning, because when I'm working up at Niagara Falls, I have to be out of the hotel by 6 to get to work on time. Anyway, it's set to download every day at 5:30, and that's what I listen to. That's the only time it updates throughout the day. So if someone drops a new episode, I never hear it. So my episodes officially come out on Wednesday and Friday, but every so often I will drop them. Actually, usually I will drop them a little early. I'll drop them on Tuesday and Thursday, especially when I'm running, because that gives me a chance to listen to those episodes out on my run and listen to hear if I made any mistakes or anything. So it always surprises me when people call in on the day that I dropped them, because in my mind, no one's going to see them until tomorrow. I just knew to pull that episode because it was there. But apparently people listen to podcasts differently than I do. it just surprises me. I mean, I'm not angry or cross or anything. That would be silly. It surprises. I don't know. So Jason's done it. Evil Jeff has done it. So how do you do it, guys? Is your podcatcher set to download like multiple times during the day? I mean, what podcatchers do you use? Somehow a push mechanic? I don't know. I'm curious. But anyway, yeah, that's it. We're all caught up on the feedback. I have a Nick Berry song stuck in my head. I don't think any of my listeners are going to have any idea what I'm talking about. At least, definitely none of the American listeners are going to know who Nick Berry is. And my British listeners, if they know who he is, they're probably going to say, "What? He has a song?" When I lived in England back in the 80s, there was this television show that my wife at the time used to watch called EastEnders, and I'm not recommending this show at all, but Nick Berry played a character. It was a soap opera. It was an evening soap opera, which we don't have those here in the States, but in Britain at the time, it was a thing. There was EastEnders, there was Coronation Street. I can't remember if there was another one, but Nick Berry played this character on EastEnders. He was like a geeky misfit, worked in a pub. I want to say his name was, it was like one of those geeky names, like Nigel or Eugene, or I think it was Simon. And he had a girlfriend named Michelle, and Michelle was having Dirty Dan's baby. Dirty Dan was the guy who ran the pub, who probably, so far too old to be having a baby with the teenager Michelle. But I think the pub was actually owned by his wife, who was the hostess with the mostess, who the actress is married to Brian May from Queen. Anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about this, other than I have this stupid song that Nick Berry sang during that time after Michelle dumped him when they were going to get married, and it was called Every Loser Wins. I don't know. It is stuck in my head. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you very much for listening. I promise I will stop talking about EastEnders. Please feel free to send us feedback. Actually, you know what? I'm going to talk about it one more time. To my British listeners, is EastEnders still on the air? Yes, I could probably Google this, but I'm afraid to Google that because then Google will think I like EastEnders and will flood me with ads. And my wife, while technically British, she hasn't been there in a long time. So she wouldn't know. She lives here. Although her cousin was just here. I could have asked her, but I wasn't thinking about it then. Anyway, yeah, any British listener, please call in. Let me know if EastEnders is still on the air, if any of those characters are still on it, if it is on the air. Anyway, thanks for listening. Feel free to send it, not even feel free, please send feedback. Feedback@decahedron.com is the email. You can attach a voice file, or you can just type in a message and I will read it. I'll have the computer read it. Maybe I'll have my wife read it. I don't know. You can also text the feedback line. It's the numbers in the show notes. It's in the outro music. All the ways are there. You know them. You hear me. They're there. They're on the website, www.decahedron.com. So until next time, happy gaming, happy life. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Decahedron RPG Cast. We'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a voice message by calling 562-774-2278. That's 562-RPG-CAST. Or by visiting sayhi.chat/Decahedron. You can also email us at feedback@decahedron.com. Links are in the show notes. For more information, visit decahedron.com. Remember that Decahedron is spelled with a K. Music is by Kevin MacLeod. Logos by Design Cat. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep those dice rolling.